All right, let's get going. Our program today is entitled What's Ahead for 2023 with Mayor Sally Meadows. We're thrilled to welcome Sally to LACC. Sally is the mayor of Los Altos in 2023 after being elected to city council in 2020 and serving as vice mayor last year. Before joining council, Sally served terms on both the Planning Commission and the Design Review Commission. Her other community service includes having been co-chair of El Camino Health's Community Advisory Council, as well as president and board member of Mentor Tutor Connection. She's a member of Los Altos Rotary Club and Los Altos Women's Caucus. Please join me in welcoming Los Altos Mayor Sally Meadows this morning. Welcome, Sally.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for that. And I'm actually confused. I'm not really here in my official capacity, but I obviously am invited because I'm mayor. So I'm just representing. I'm representing our community, but I'm just having a conversation and representing my views with all of you today. It's kind of an in-between thing.
Yeah, with all these public officials,
Yeah.
a good thing Jolie, didn't show up to this one, right?
You didn't give her the link, right?
Yes. So it's been about a month since you were sworn in as mayor. Great ceremony and event that night, and you got your first few meetings under your belt, including a really well-run meeting this past week. How's it feel? Does it feel any different, now that you're mayor versus a plain old council member?
Well, it is different. It's kind of like when, for those of you who have children and have multiple children, you have one child. When the second one comes along, you don't lose the first one. You just have more things to do, right? And so basically, as a council member, there's a lot of work involved, a lot of preparation, and that still is there. But on top of that, as mayor, you add on the need to lead the meeting. And for me anyway, and I'm sure for everyone else who's been mayor or led any meetings, it takes a lot of focus because you want to see who wants to engage, who doesn't, who might look puzzled, and it's a hybrid environment. So I have to be ready with my content matter, which every council member does. But then again, as with anyone leading meetings, I have to be very focused on that to try to make it run. So that's different. Plus, there's just as mayor, you seem to get more emails and stuff. And I'm already I don't have the best email hygiene, if you want to call it that. So I'm not the best at clearing through my emails. Marie knows this from from prior days. So it is different. And on the really positive side, there's a lot of fun things you get invited to do. I was invited to join a longtime resident for her 101st birthday. So a piece of cake and a longtime resident with wonderful stories. So I'm looking forward to more of that type of thing too.
That's great. And throw in this past week a change of venue as well with a cranky AV system and who's on screen and who's in person raising their hand, and I'm sure it was a little chaotic.
Yeah, and I think some of you have noticed, and I certainly noticed, that our recording on YouTube from this week is very low resolution. And I've mentioned that was the first time we've used that new AV setup. So something, I'm not sure what happened. If I'd known I was going to be in 1950s resolution, I wouldn't have had my hair done, I think. But
yeah, it was what was on Zoom was not what was on YouTube. So it was very interesting. I think it's because of the way the recording system works, but we'll get through it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, 2023 is here, and there are, I'm sure, countless issues to tackle this year. And before getting into, policies and programs, I just wanted to ask you a generic question about, the biggest. What do you feel are the biggest challenges facing Los Altos as a community right now?
So, I think we're in so we're about a year and a half into our not so new city manager's tenure now, right? And so he's been doing a lot of regrouping, at looking at how we manage things. So one of the big things we're challenges is that we're in the process of cleaning up how we manage and track our finances, which will be very helpful. You know, we're going to still be investing in effort and money this year, which will just help make everything else easier in the long run. If we can track things better, it'll enable us to do better budgeting, and as we set priorities, to understand how that matches to funding. And so I think the challenge this year will be to continue that process and bring up our new financial system. Another challenge is, and this is common to, I think, most of the cities, if not all the cities we hear, which is to attract and retain staff. And for a long time, particularly in my time as a commissioner, when I attended like training events and whatever, and talked to folks from other cities, and even ran into former Los Altos employees, they would say, wow, what a, you know, they wouldn't have necessarily the best things to say about working in Los Altos. But I think that we've put a lot of measures in place, and I'll probably mention priorities in a minute, so I'll save the details for some of those measures for then. But we're really focusing on our staff. And so without our staff, there's nothing, because they run the city, they provide the services. So, the challenge is to continue putting in place measures that will allow us to be competitive. And for the first time, we actually do have sort of market rate salaries to attract. We weren't, believe it or not, we targeted below market rate. So you can imagine that didn't necessarily incite a lot of interest in some of our openings. So that's a challenge. And I think we're looking at improving our processes to run the city more effectively and efficiently, to provide better services for restaurants, businesses, and other stakeholders. I think you can talk, and when I'm saying this, I'm not trying to disparage anything that happened in the past, but I think for any of you who've had to work with the city, you probably feel that there's more of a can do, yes, we can do attitude, the responsiveness, I think. And so basically the challenge is to turn around what was maybe a little bit of reluctance and fear, even to manage what was going on in the city, to now actually say, yes, we can do this. What do you need? Let us serve you. And then, of course, there's our infamous aging infrastructure. And we're going to talk about our need for improvements in public safety infrastructure, police station, fire station roofs, or whatever. And now we know about, thanks to all the rain, we know about the fact that we have some very old generators and stuff like that. So that's certainly challenges, but we've had a really good start with our new community center, and our long-term put in place by at least a council, if not two councils ago, our priority to improve our roads and bring them up to a higher standard. So we have challenges. Some of them cost money, and some of them just cost sort of an attitude shift. And so I think we're going to be able to make some good progress.
Great. And I think, as a resident, it's noticeable sort of the change in spirit and attitude since Gabe has been here. And just, people, I think staff now feels empowered to tackle some big problems, and really love the creativity on the EOC, changeover to the community center. That was very cool. So, we've talked a bit about challenges, and as mayor, you kind of helped to shape the calendar for what are we going to try and tackle this year, what's on the agenda, each meeting. So love it if you could share your thoughts on your main priorities for 2023 as mayor?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm very fortunate because one of the first things we'll do, and this will happen by the end of this month, is submit our housing element update to HCD. Now we've submitted it already. That was a draft, and over the last I guess it's 2 months, we've been incorporating various changes and feedback. And as probably many, if not all of you know, we went through that this past Tuesday night and made some good progress. So we're poised to have our last meeting on that on January 24th. And you know, when you're mayor or when you're on council, things are often just a matter of timing, because this housing element update has taken at least a year and a half work by so many people, particularly we have one of the members here. We had a council subcommittee, council member Flagger and former council member Enender, who worked very hard. We had the consultant, we had staff, we had residents. Probably most of you on the call were involved in conversations and workshops and everything. So, but I'm the one who gets to sign it when we submit it. So to me, that's very exciting. But I'll talk, I think, more about that later, because you have a specific question relating to the housing element. So that's certainly a priority, but that's actually not the end of the story. That's the beginning, because once we submit it and we then need to start to implement it. And those are, there's so many programs in there. I haven't even counted them there. And the timeline for implementation is going to be particularly tight. I mean, we'll have 3 years, but we're front loading some of these changes so that we can really incent development. And so as I was reading through the draft that we reviewed, the near to final draft that we reviewed on Tuesday night, and there was all these things that had a date of May 2023. I'm like, that's 4 months from now.
Right.
And there was this long list of things we were going to do by May 2023. I'm like, oh my God. So I don't know what the Gantt chart looks like for all those programs and the timelines. And HCD wanted some of them, you know, move forward in time. So submitting it and signing it is now the easy part. But beginning to implement is going to take a lot of resources. And big thanks to Director Zorns and City Manager and everyone who was involved in just pulling this off.
Yep. Great. Other priorities you want to highlight?
Yeah, there's a few more. So I mentioned the challenges about attracting and retaining staff. And so our priority is to continue to implement our total compensation philosophy between Irene Sullivan and our head of HR and the city manager. Last year, they developed a compensation philosophy that council adopted. And so that allows us, as I said, to attract people with market rate salaries and some other creative approaches. So for example, I've heard that the flexible work arrangements, scheduling options that have been put in place are very popular, and that there might even be that other cities are beginning to contact our city manager to say, hey, we hear this is working well. And, you know, I just think it's great if we can become an example instead of a good example instead of a whipping post.
What to do instead of what not to do.
Yeah,
right?
you know, so it's certainly a priority to continue doing that. More quickly, I also mentioned our finances, and we need to be able to bring that new financial system online. And we're also going to focus on creating a better alignment between council staff and commissions, especially relative to priorities and budgets and staff resources. So the first real flavor of that will happen at we call it a retreat, but in February, we'll begin to talk about some of those concepts and what we might envision there. And my own personal priority as mayor is to start talking about our successes. I mean, it's very easy to focus on how difficult things are, but really we've been doing a lot of things right, and I want to focus on what we're doing right.
That's great. Yeah, I was thinking the other day that through this storm, PG&E has held up incredibly well, at least in Los Altos, and so I wasn't sure if that was dumb luck or foresight or a combination of the two, but knock on wood, we're still rolling today. We're still recording, so that's good. So I did have a specific question about the housing element, which I think you covered a little bit, but obviously there's always concern about you don't know what HCD is going to say back, and many of us have not been through this process before. So how are you feeling from a gut level? Like, you feel pretty good, especially relative to some recent news about Mountain View not making their date, or I've seen other communities, like, they're still arguing over what their inventory should be, and that they'll probably get to submitting sometime this spring. Like, how do you feel overall?
Yeah, so I'm really pleased. I'm pleasantly surprised, actually, and impressed, especially when you look at where we were last year at this time. And I think how particularly involved community members were feeling, and some council members were probably a little anxious too, because for one thing, it's just a huge process by itself. So there's a lot of work to be done, but it's just a really difficult process. I mean, we really did, and we really did a lot of self-introspection. And so I think that what we got back from HCD, and I think maybe there's only one example, if that, of them accepting something on the first try. So there's always standard things that they'll say and comment on. But from what I understand, our comments were relatively reasonable. And so I'm hopeful that actually our credibility will improve, because I think we've really put together a great work process. And again, having served on design review and planning commission, I've got 8 years of land use experience before joining council. And as I look through what we've identified and what we're going to accomplish, I just think we've really done a great job. So, and as you mentioned, other cities are really struggling with this. And I'm actually surprised, because I think of Mountain View as a leader in building housing. So maybe it's more of a process thing. I'm not sure what happened there, but Cupertino, I think, hasn't submitted even a first draft.
Wow.
So, and I could be wrong on some of this. I don't follow. It's enough to follow our goings-ons, much less looking at other cities. But I'm really impressed, especially looking a year ago when there was some anxiety, certainly on my part, of how this was going to be. And again, kudos and credit to so many people who pulled this off. Again, we haven't signed it yet, but I think we're in really good shape.
Great. Yeah, it's great to hear. It's certainly better than the alternative, and wondering what's going on or when we're going to submit it. So, all right, now it's time for the more theoretical realm. So I have a question, which is, if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about Los Altos, oh, there you go. Should be your gavel, right? What would it be? What would you change?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And so what I came up with, and this might be just more my own personal philosophy, but of course we have issues. Every city has issues, and we maybe have more issues than we have at other points in time or whatever. But I do wish that we could really appreciate how lucky we are and all the good fortune we have. I mean, so I don't know about you, but when I go do my business around the Bay Area and I say, let's say, come off 280 on El Monte or whatever, it's like a sigh of relief. There's this beautiful community that we live in. And I'm so grateful for that. And so we do need to work to make things better, and we are working very hard, but I really don't want us to forget how, on the relative scale of things, how good we have it. And I feel grateful to live here, and I appreciate it deeply. And I'm still willing to work hard to make it even better. But really, just we're so fortunate.
Yeah, I totally agree. And as I've gotten into the planning commission,
There's something weird going
Penny,
on.
I think you keep unmuting, so I'm gonna hit mute for you, which isn't working. There we go. I've just noticed that the amount of time that all of you as council members and all of the commissioners put in, like, we should be very grateful for all of that work, because I don't know how people who have full-time jobs pull that off, with all their, all their other responsibilities, raising a family or whatever it might be. So thank you. And yes, we should be grateful. Next question. You've always been extremely approachable. I think many of us here, have known you for years or gotten to know you more recently, and you're always willing to have a conversation. What help do you need from the residents of Los Altos during your term as mayor?
Well, I would say, and this is more something that's already going on, but just keep doing it, which is to stay involved and committed to our community. And again, we're fortunate that so many of our residents get involved and help with solutions and do the hard work to make things happen. And I think that makes all the difference. I mean, if you look around some of the things that we have in our community, well, and again, I use this as an example on the evening I became mayor, which was the History Museum. Palo Alto envies us, our History Museum. And I remember I was a number of years back, I was in Bell's Books in Palo Alto, if everyone knows that very old treasure of a bookstore. And the woman there was involved in an effort to get a history museum in Palo Alto. And she said, oh, wow, Los Altos has got the best history museum. And I saw recently that they're actually really looks like that effort is gonna gain feet. But we had residents that made that happen. And so that's what we've got in Los Altos. And not only is it people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and do the hard work, but we've got this brilliant, Silicon Valley is a place full of brilliant people. So I will tell you, as a council member, when you interview people for commissions, and half of them are CEOs or something, and you have to say, no, thank you, we're not appointing you. It's just crazy, right? I mean, you have these people who've got world-class expertise, and these are our volunteers. And so this is why, again, part of why we're so fortunate, because we can make things happen outside of city, it's our community as a whole that makes things happen. So I just would ask people to keep being involved, because that's how we are who we are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I'll play Gary for a moment and just give a little foreshadowing. New permanent exhibit coming to the History Museum. I know many people, Larry, Gary, many others involved. So be exciting to see that get off the ground. And I think we're very lucky to have people like the Getchkes and others who can make things like this happen in town. So that's always great. So I think there are a lot of people here who want to ask you questions, but I wanted to give you an opportunity just for any final thoughts before we move into the Q&A with everybody.
Right. So I'll go back to the night that I became mayor. And I think if this is my theme, and I talked about it that night, is really about community and vision. And we have many examples how the community has pulled together over our 70 years, and actually beyond 70 years, because we incorporated 70 years ago last month. And of course, that took work to get to that point. So we've had people over this time who've worked hard to achieve our shared vision. So today we look back at those accomplishments, various accomplishments over those 70 years, and we applaud those. So, and as we move forward as a community, we can work together to, share vision, which is not to say everyone's going to agree on vision all the time, but that's my theme, is community vision and appreciation for our community, because there's so many people in it committed to making it better. And I don't mean to sound Pollyannish, but this is really how I feel. So anyway, that would be my closing remarks.
Great. Well, thank you. We'll move on to the Q&A. I just asked everybody to please raise your virtual hand and I'll call on you. And I just asked that we limit it to one question and no speeches, please. So, Gary's first, so we might be in trouble here. Go ahead, Gary.
Well, as Los Alton of the Year, I should be first, right? Anyway.
Oh, of course, please, always.
I watched a webinar yesterday called Code Red for Humanity. Pretty alarming title. It was put on by Actera, and one of the speakers was a teenager, really well-spoken young person, only 15. And she said they've cited some studies that show that amongst the teens, there's a lot of anxiety and fear about climate change. And so we have a climate action plan, Sally, and I'm wondering what—
Climate action and adaptation plan.
Thank you, even more complicated and wonderful. But so what are the priorities within that plan? I know you mentioned success. We've hired 2 new sustainability coordinators, managers, Casey and Tanya, and they're just wonderful. And I know they're going to carry a lot going forward. So what are your priorities to implement that plan?
Yeah, so thanks for that, Gary. Yeah, I was on that webinar last night, so well done. And our former mayor Jan Pepper was one of the speakers. So well, it doesn't get implemented. And so let me talk about plans. And climate action, complete streets are aspirational plans, in the sense that we put a lot of options in them, and then some of them will come forward to council over time to talk about implementation. Housing element is more of a contract, but so I don't want to digress too much on that. But so the climate action and adaptation plan has a lot of options in it. What we adopt will actually be very closely tied into our goals with the housing element. One of the things they talked about last night was the theme of how much greenhouse gases generate from our built environment, both residential and commercial. So I don't want to dwell on too much, because there looks like there's a lot of questions, but really, as we begin working through the housing element, and as we begin improving our infrastructure, both our fleet, our generators, everything else, that CAAP will be a guideline for how we move forward and implement all these actions.
Thank you.
Great. Janine.
Thank you. Hi, Sally.
Hello, Janine.
Killing it so far. My question has to do with you talked about being, wow, we had an opportunity, or we got an opportunity to be a leader, to lead by example in terms of how the hybrid work model for our workers as an incentive to work here, and that's proving successful, and other cities are calling. It occurs to me that, it doesn't occur to me, it's a fact that becoming a leader by example means you kind of have to have a little extra courage. You have to be willing to either try something new or push against maybe the common will, because the will may be stuck in the past. How do you how do you plan to lead the council and lead the city to have more of an aspirational, I use that word, an aspirational and forward-looking way of looking at things so that we can become, because we have many opportunities in the city, I think, to become leader by example.
Yeah.
So how do you plan to twist untwist that knot?
Well, I mean, I won't do that by myself, but I talked about community and vision. Vision is all about the future. And I think we should take comfort for the fact that some of the revolutionary decisions and the audacious efforts that happened over 70 years, we look back and applaud those. I mean, even our community center is a recent example. And yes, everything costs money, everything has risk, but we're only going to move forward. There's no ability to move backward. There is an ability to stagnate. But I really think it's a matter of attitude and we just talked about the CAP. That is a vision for the future. The housing element is a vision for the future. I think we can still be Los Altos no matter what we implement. It's not all about whether we are single-story ranches or we have some more townhomes around, and not to trivialize that, but it's just about attitude. And I think I expressed that in some of the comments I made earlier.
Great. And I see Scott asked a question. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you, Scott. It's great to see Lava back at full force. We missed you guys for a couple of years, and always something going on downtown that you guys are behind and orchestrating, and just wanted to say thank you for all that you're doing right now.
Well, thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. And not sure where we were missing. I know I saw you an awful lot during the pandemic, but anyhow, thank you for those nice words. I wanted to ask Sally, you had mentioned obviously documents that are forward thinking and planning. And one of those, of course, is the downtown vision.
Somebody's not muted. I'm just going to point out. I don't know who that is, but sorry to interrupt, Scott. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
Just wanted to understand. I know that the council is going to be looking at the downtown vision. What parts of that are expressly interested in doing, and how soon do you think any of those can actually be implemented?
Yeah, so a lot of a number of the programs in the housing element actually tie into downtown vision, whether that be parking, whether that be zoning for housing on some of the plazas, whether that be zoning around town to enable somewhat higher density. Again, it's not going to be a high density downtown, but so there's a lot of elements of the vision that I think as I've read through and watched how the housing element is developed, I really feel it does tie back to that. And in some senses, I think the pandemic, we put that on hold. But one of the items that council will be discussing soon again, it's not that we just didn't discuss it before, but is the outdoor dining program. And so we had put a permanent program in place, but it's never actually been exercised. We're still operating, the outdoor dining is still operating under pandemic rules rather than the permanent program. And so since that hasn't gone in place, we're going to be talking again about what does that permanent program look like. So I think actually, so there's a lot of aspects of the downtown vision that really underlie some of the changes that we're making through housing element and through other aspects of the program. So I don't know if that answered the question, but that's what I would say.
All right, Dean.
Hi, good morning, Sally. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. I'm just curious about the relationship you as mayor have with the other mayors locally, and what kind of coordination happens. And obviously Los Altos, Hills, and Mountain View are forefront, but that can extend beyond those two cities as well.
Yeah, so that's so since I've only been mayor a month, and most of that was the holidays, But that's a really good question, and it's really there's some formal venues for that. For example, some of the regional boards or whatever tend to be mayors, but they don't have to be. So I'm now the board member on Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Councilmember Flagger has been well representing us for the previous 2 years. And that's not all mayors, but a number of mayors are on that. And then there's the Cities Association, and there's other forums where you get to know some of the other mayors, but really you get to know some of the other council members. So, but I think it does seem to be kind of special because I've had some communications with other mayors recently, and it's sort of like you're in a class together, and so I think we haven't had a lot of time to bond yet, but I do think there is a lot of commonality. If you're the mayoral class of 2023, then there is a special bond, and we'll be thrown together a lot. And so I look forward to learning from them and getting to know all these other mayors and councils, because every city is very different. It's very intriguing, actually. Good question.
Sally, who takes the lead on, organizing the mayors? Is it just random? Like, you could say, hey, why don't we all get together for dinner or something like that?
Well, they're really, yeah, I don't know. And actually, maybe Councilmember Flagger should answer that, because as I said, I've had a month which was largely holiday. So I don't think there is maybe the Cities Association ends up looking like that, but again, that's not all mayors. So I'm not yet aware of a Bay Area mayor's, happy hour or anything like that.
Yeah,
but,
well, it seems like alcohol would be appropriate, right?
Not in January. Yeah.
All right. I don't see any other hands. So last call for first questioners. And then if anybody wants to follow up, we still have a few minutes left. So any burning questions? Oh, I think Laura has had one in the chat, but Laura, why don't you, instead of me trying to read that, why don't you raise your hand and ask it? Is Laura, I don't even.
Or I can just unmute myself.
Please.
Can you guys hear? Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. So this is a little bit down the rabbit hole in the weeds, but I was just saying that, with the all affordable project on Distal, I know that they've been trying to look for government sources of funding to increase the number of EV charges in that building, and have yet to find, and I think there are something like 10 right now, which is not a lot for the number of units. And in Code Red last night, they talked about in Menlo Park, they've been doing crowdsource funding to get funds for low-income electrification. And so just, the thought occurred, it seems to me that in our community where we have the resources, we should be stepping up somehow to ensure the low-income residents in our community have equitable access to charging. So I'd really hate to see that building go in with, fewer chargers than those residents are going to need in the future. And I understand for affordable housing, you need to ensure that, you keep the costs down. So I don't expect the developer necessarily to do it, but we as a community, if there's any way we can support them, either finding funding or helping them.
Is there a question or?
Yeah.
Well, I guess the question is, what is the city going to do, or what can the city do? And that's why I put it in chat, because it was more of just, an idea floating in my head as opposed to a pointed question. But, what the city can do to ensure that our buildings for all our residents are built for the future.
Yeah, so I don't know, and I'm wondering if Lisa has. There's some echo.
Well, Laura, I think that's coming from yours. There we go.
Thank you. Okay. So I don't know if Nisa has her hand up because she has an answer. So I suspect that if you can go to her right after this, but there's quite a bit of funding out there, especially through the ACT that Biden sound recently. They were talking about this last night too, and I forget there's too many acts and the big spending bill. So there's actually a lot of funds for this type of thing. Now, whose job it is to go and find it, that's what I'm not sure about. But there's got to be avenues, because the priority is really on equity, and so there must be ways to find funds to do this, I would think, and maybe ask NISA.
And even
That's
as Pete
I'm happy-
put in the chat, there's there being EV ready is as simple as putting in a 240 receptacle, or even a 120. But I'm sure NISA has either a zinger question or can answer one of the other questions for us. Go ahead, former Mayor NISA Flieger.
Thank you. And this is breaking news, and we'll eventually do a press release once it's formalized. But I was actually, as one of my last acts as SBC representative for Los Altos, I actually secured funding for the 330 Distal Circle additional EV infrastructure. So that's in the works. So we're very excited. So Welton Jordan's opinion piece in the Crier, Dennis Young, yes, 2 days ago wasn't fully accurate on that, because we have secured the funding, but we're still working out the details. And so once that's finalized, we will do some kind of press release. But Laura, for Distal, we're good. SBCE is funding it.
Awesome.
Yay.
Did you also have a question, or just breaking news?
Just breaking news.
All right, awesome. I don't think of Community Coalition as a newsbreaker, but the town crier, take that. We're making news as we speak. So all right, Gary's up for another question.
Well, I was going to follow up on what Laura had a question about. We have a local expert with George Lee and PowerFlex, and he should be contacted about EV charging. I know he's talking to Manny Hernandez about adding some additional EV charging at the community center. So take advantage of our local connections. And it's the Inflation Reduction Act that's got a lot of funding as well. So I don't know.
That's it. That's what I don't know why it just wouldn't come to me. I need another cup of coffee.
I don't claim to understand it all that well, but there's money there, folks. Thank you.
There's a lot of money there. Getting your hands on it is another thing.
Yeah, the strangely named Inflation Reduction Act, aka Energy Bill. David.
I just wanted to tag on to what I was going to say, pretty much the same thing Gary said about a local, someone who's extremely helpful locally. George Lee, PowerFlex is located at 392 First Street. I was the broker who did the lease for them. And George's company's actually done the school. He's pretty much done every school EV charger station throughout the South Bay, and also has done most of the solar. And he also helps the police departments out with CV scanning. I mean, he's just this whirlwind young fella that knows pretty much anything you want to know about EV charging. And so if anyone ever wanted to reach out, please email me or call me. I'll connect you to George. He's an excellent resource.
Yeah, that's the building next to Bella Vita that has all the electrical equipment outside, and it looks like a big science experiment over there. I'm glad I'm not a next door neighbor, because looks like they're gonna blow something up. But it's quite an amazing setup.
Yeah, but he's great. And Sally, thanks very much for coming, and good luck with your year as mayor.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, if last call on questions, otherwise we're gonna wrap it up. Anybody? All right, well, I want to thank Sally and give a quick announcement of what's coming next. We have our next meeting on Friday the 27th, 2 weeks from today, from 8:30 to 9:30. Please join us for a panel discussion entitled Downtown Vitality, Where Are We? With our very own David Rock, commercial real estate broker, Robin Abrams, community advocate, and Manik Joshi, who's the owner operator of Gourmet Works. It should be a great discussion on businesses downtown and vitality. And if you'd like to be added to our mailing list, please send an email to info@losaltoscommunitycoalition.org. Email should be posted in the chat if Kim takes care of that. And then, as always, a big thank you to the Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation. Adine, thank you for providing us with financial and in-kind support, and as well with Larry Barron for all the work that he does to keep our YouTube channel going. Larry Barron Residence helps us with that. So please join me in thanking Los Altos Mayor Sally Meadows for a great discussion today. Air clap, everyone. And Happy New Year. We're looking forward to a great 2023. Thank you all.
And thanks to the Community Coalition for doing these. And I do appreciate that they're online, because I may not be here in person a lot, but I do watch them later.
Oh, that's great to hear. Thank you so much. You're one of the 72 people on our YouTube channel. So that's awesome.
All right. Thanks all. Have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Sally.
Bye-bye.
You're welcome. My
Great.
pleasure.